Picture this, it's World War II, and there's an invisible killer hiding in the Atlantic Ocean. This thing was destroying the Allies, and literally starving an entire country. Hitler's U-boats, his submarines, were an absolute nightmare. They hunted in packs, and they were sinking ships faster than anyone could build them. And they were protected by a secret code that was impossible to break, the Enigma machine. This little box was about to win the entire war for the Nazis, by choking off the supplies that kept the Allies alive. The good guys were losing, badly. It looked like it was over. But what if I told you the weapon that beat this thing wasn't a new battleship or a bigger bomb? What if the key wasn't on the battlefield at all, but in a few quiet wooden huts in the English countryside? Everything you probably think you know about how the U-boat threat was broken is wrong. This wasn't some crazy spy movie. The secret that completely turned the war around came from the last place you'd ever look. It came from a secret network of crossword puzzle champions, math geniuses, and super smart students. These were basically normal people who tore apart the Nazi war machine with their brains instead of bombs. This is the insane story of Bletchley Park. To see why Bletchley Park was so amazing, you have to understand just how terrifying the Battle of the Atlantic was. Britain is an island, so it needed ships for literally everything. I'm talking every tank, every bullet, every gallon of fuel, and almost every bite of food had to be shipped across the sea. Winston Churchill later said the only thing that truly frightened him during the war was the U-boat threat. And he was right to be scared. The German Navy's commander, Admiral Karl Dönitz, had a crazy new strategy. He didn't just send his U-boats out to hunt alone. He grouped them into what the Allies called wolfpacks. These wolfpacks would form a massive patrol line across the ocean. When one U-boat spotted a convoy, it wouldn't attack. It would secretly radio the location back to HQ using that unbreakable Enigma code. HQ would then use Enigma to order every U-boat in the area to swarm the target. Over a few nights, it was complete chaos. Torpedoes would slam into ships from all directions. For the merchant sailors, who were civilians and not soldiers, it was a slaughter. An official report from the time said, "The Germans never came so near to disrupting communications between the New World and the Old as in the first 20 days of March 1943. The losses were insane. In March 1943 alone, U-boats sank 82 ships in the Atlantic. Britain was being strangled. The wolfpacks seemed to be everywhere at once, and the secret to their success was the Enigma code. As long as that code was unbreakable, the U-boats would own the Atlantic. To win the war, the Allies had to break Enigma. But how do you fight an enemy you can't even see? This is the Enigma machine. It looks like a simple typewriter in a wooden box. But this thing was an absolute beast of German engineering. I'm going to give you the simple version of how this thing works. You press a key, let's say A, and an electric signal goes through a bunch of scramblers and lights up a totally different letter, like Q. First it goes through this plug board at the front that swapped letters around. That alone created a crazy number of possibilities. But the real magic was the rotors, 3 or more spinning wheels with insane internal wiring. The signal went through one, got scrambled, went through the next, scrambled again through a third, before hitting a reflector that shot it all the way back through a different path. And here's the craziest part. Every single time you press a key, the first rotor moves one step. This changes the entire electrical path. So if you typed anti-eval, you wouldn't get 2QQ. You'd get 4 completely different letters. The machine was constantly changing its own settings. To read a message, you needed an identical Enigma set up in the exact same way. And the settings changed every single day. The number of possible combinations wasn't in the millions or billions, it was in the trillions. It would take you longer than the age of the universe to try them all by hand. The Germans were 100% sure their code was unbreakable. And for a while, the Allies agreed. But here's the part of the story nobody talks about. The mission to crack Enigma didn't start in Britain, it started in Poland. Years before the war even began, the Poles knew they were first on Hitler's list, so breaking German codes was their top priority. And they did something genius. While others thought it was a language problem, the Poles realized it was a math problem. Their cipher bureau hired 3 brilliant young mathematicians, Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Rojewski, and Henryk Zygalski. Using pure math and some secret documents smuggled out of Germany, Rejewski did the impossible. He figured out the internal wiring of the military Enigma's rotors. It was a breakthrough no one else had managed. But that still didn't give them the daily settings. They found a weakness, and to speed things up, they built machines called bombers to search for the keys, and developed special Zygalski sheets to find the rotor settings. For years before the war, the Poles were secretly reading German messages. But as war got closer, the Germans made Enigma even more complex. So on July 25, 1939, just 5 weeks before the Nazi invasion, they did something incredible. They invited top British and French codebreakers to a secret meeting and literally gave them everything. They handed over replicas of the Enigma, designs for their bomber machine, and all of their methods. The British couldn't believe it. This one gift from a country that was about to be destroyed is what made the rest of the story possible. So, the British now have the keys to the kingdom. They set up their secret base in this giant Victorian mansion called Bletchley Park, codenamed Station X. And they started building an army, but not with soldiers. They literally put a hard crossword puzzle in the newspaper. If you could solve it in under 12 minutes, you got an invitation for a secret job. They hired university professors, chess grandmasters, linguists, and especially mathematicians. The place was basically a secret university for geniuses. The locals had no idea what was going on, and thought it was some kind of mental hospital. The work was super stressful, top secret, and they did it 24/7 in these freezing cold wooden huts. And the secrecy was insane. You couldn't talk about your work to anyone, not even the person in the hut next to you. Someone in Hut 6, breaking army codes, knew nothing about what Hut 8 was doing for the Navy. As the war went on, Bletchley Park recruited thousands of women. By 1945, out of nearly 10,000 staff, about 75% were women. At first they were underestimated, but they quickly became the engine that made the entire place run. They operated the giant code-breaking machines, transcribed endless Morse code, and managed massive indexes of data. While only a few women like the brilliant Joan Clark were called cryptanalysts, thousands of women were the backbone of the entire operation, turning this weird experiment into the world's first code-breaking factory. And at the center of it all was this guy, Alan Turing. He was a socially awkward but unbelievably brilliant mathematician, and they gave him the hardest job of all, cracking the German Naval Enigma. Turing took the Polish bomber design and imagined something far bigger and more powerful. His big idea was based on using crypts, a piece of text they guessed was in the message. German operators were predictable, often using the same phrases like Wettervorhersage, weather forecast. A huge flaw in Enigma was that a letter could never be encrypted as itself, and Turing realized he could use that to eliminate thousands of wrong answers. So he designed a machine to automate this search. It was a 7-foot-tall, noisy, mechanical monster. It had all these spinning drums on the front that acted like the Enigma rotors. It was basically like running dozens of Enigmas at the same time, all searching for the right setting. The machine, with a key improvement from another mathematician, Gordon Welchman, was called the Turing-Welchman Bomber. The Wrens, women from the Royal Naval Service, operated the bombers. They'd get a menu from the codebreakers, wire up the machine and fire it up. The drums would spin and clatter, testing thousands of possibilities a minute. The bomber wasn't looking for the right answer. It was looking for contradictions to find settings that were possible. They'd test that possible key on a real Enigma. If it spit out German, boom, they had it. The first Bombay, Victory, was installed in March 1940. By the end of the war, over 200 of these things were running 24/7. Turing had built a machine to beat a machine. But even with Turing's monster machine, the naval codebreakers were stuck. The German Navy's security was just way stricter. The breakthrough they needed had to come from the ocean. On May 9, 1941, the German sub U-1110 was forced to surface after being blasted by depth charges. The German commander thought his sub was sinking and ordered everyone to abandon ship. A 20-year-old British officer, David Baum, led a boarding party and literally jumped onto the enemy submarine. Inside, they hit the jackpot, an Enigma machine, still plugged in, with all its codebooks and setting sheets. It was an absolute goldmine. The sub sank the next day, which was perfect because the Germans just assumed all the secrets went down with it. The captured materials were rushed to Bletchley Park, and the effect was immediate. They could read the U-boat traffic, convoys were rerouted around the wolfpacks, and shipping losses dropped like a rock. But then, disaster. On February 1st, 1942, the Germans rolled out an upgraded four-rotor Enigma machine. Just like that, Bletchley Park went blind. The next 10 months were known as the Enigma Blackout, and U-boat attacks became deadlier than ever. The codebreakers were desperate. They knew they had to capture one of the new machines. On October 30, 1942, a U-boat, U-559, was cornered and forced to surface. As the Germans abandoned ship, 3 British sailors, Lieutenant Anthony Fasson, able seaman Colin Grazier, and a 16-year-old canteen assistant named Tommy Brown, jumped into the water and climbed aboard the sinking sub. Inside the dark, flooding boat, they found the new four-rotor codebooks. Fasson and Grazier passed them up to Brown, but the sub suddenly plunged, taking them with it. They literally sacrificed their lives for those documents. But their sacrifice worked. The codebooks got to Bletchley Park. The blackout was over. Now they had the codes to the four-rotor Enigma, and everything changed. The intelligence from Bletchley Park, codenamed Ultra, became a weapon. They could see the U-boat patrol lines and send hunter-killer groups to wipe them out. The final showdown came in May of 1943, a month the Germans would call Black May. It was an absolute slaughter. At the start of the month, a convoy was attacked. The Allies lost 13 ships, but they took down 6 U-boats. A few weeks later, another convoy was attacked. This time, not a single Allied ship was lost, but 5 more U-boats were sunk. The hunters had become the hunted. Throughout May, the Germans lost a staggering 41 U-boats, a full quarter of their entire operational fleet. The commander of the U-boat fleet, Admiral Dönitz, was in shock. His unstoppable weapon was broken. On May 24, 1943, he basically gave up, pulling most of his submarines out of the North Atlantic. He reportedly said, "We have lost the Battle of the Atlantic." Black May was the turning point. The Allied lifeline was secure. The path was now clear for the invasion of Europe. The most critical battle of the war had been won in secret by a bunch of geniuses in wooden huts. And here's the absolute craziest part. After the war, nobody could talk about it. For 30 years, it was one of the most closely guarded secrets in the world. The men and women of Bletchley Park returned to their normal lives, forbidden from ever telling anyone, even their families, that they had saved the world. Churchill called them his geese who laid the golden eggs and never cackled. He knew their work shortened the war by at least 2 years, saving countless lives. It was an incredible victory won by Polish mathematicians, brave sailors, thousands of women operating machines, and the strange geniuses who could see patterns in total chaos. But for Alan Turing, the man at the center of it all, the story has a tragic ending. Because his work was a state secret, nobody knew what he had done. In 1952, he was prosecuted by the country he saved for being gay. To avoid prison, he accepted chemical castration. 2 years later, he died by suicide. The mind that had saved millions was broken by prejudice. It wasn't until 2009 that the British government formally apologized. The story of Bletchley Park is an insane reminder that sometimes the biggest threats are defeated not by guns and bombs, but by the quiet power of human intellect and ordinary people doing the extraordinary. If you think this secret history is as incredible as I do, smash that subscribe button for more deep dives into the past. And let us know in the comments what other unsung hero's story needs to be told. Thanks for watching.